everybody. Welcome to episode 15 of Eat, Drink, Write, and Urban Fantasy Whiteboard. How has your week been?
Same old, same old. It's, we're still shelter in place, but I did do a lot of writing without meaning to. I sat down at my computer and opened up my work in progress because I had nothing else to do, and suddenly there were 3,000 more words than there were before. So
that is awesome.
Yeah, very unexpected. I didn't even mean to do it. I didn't sit down with the intention to write, but it did its own thing. So that'll do.
Okay.
How about you?
Then this week, like you said, same old, same old. We did start our Zoom happy hour family meetings this week.
Yeah.
We did that for the first time on Saturday. So that was fun. I got to see my sister and her husband and all her kids and one of my brothers. My other brother was having to work and his kids couldn't get on. So I think we're going to try to do that weekly, which was really neat. It's a really neat way to get together and see each other during this quarantine time.
Yeah, it was fun.
What are you drinking?
I am drinking a mango White Claw.
Oh, nice.
Because I had gotten a variety pack, so I have a few flavors.
Oh, do you like that one?
I do, yeah. The one I had last time, I don't remember. I think it was tangerine, and I like that one a lot more. But mango's good.
Okay. And what are you eating?
Jordan, my little sister, for those of you who don't know her, made sugar cookies from scratch.
Nice.
So she gave me a bunch of those because she told me she made a batch for 48 people. Because she did not read the directions. Or she didn't read the instructions and see how much they were for. So she was like, well, would you like some? And I was like, you know what? I can use them for the podcast. So yes.
Neat.
Yeah.
I am drinking a pickleback, which is
yum.
Vodka and pickle juice, which usually you do it in a shot. But since going on keto, my husband and I have decided that these are really good drinks. So that's what I've got. And he had made me some Scotch eggs this morning. So I already ate them. I tried really hard to wait until the podcast. I did take pictures of them so I can post that, but I ate them already.
I would have too.
It was too hard. I waited a good long time, but I just couldn't not eat them.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
And then the other thing I did this week is try to make handmade masks.
Oh, yeah.
There's such a shortage out there, and some states are now having mandatory masks. Mm-hmm. I discovered that my sewing skills suck, but I am getting better and better. I actually made two, one for Daddy and one for me, that we've actually worn out. They were very comfortable. So I think I now have the ability to make some, and I'm going to try to post them for as cheap as I possibly can, just the cost of the expenses and making them, just so that there's another source. I'll put them on my Etsy site,
nice.
Which is Dragon Craft Creations is my Etsy site. And so I'm going to hopefully this week sometime have a bunch of masks up for people, and they'll be ready made, so they'll be ready to mail out. I ordered some, as you know, for you all, and it took almost a month to get here. So I won't put mine up until they're made so that they can ship out immediately to help the people that need them.
Yeah, so thank you for that, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I wish that I had the skill to make things faster and better than I do, but at least I got you some ordered.
Yeah, definitely.
So today we've decided we're going to talk about how to write dialogue.
Yeah.
And you have a definition, so I'm going to have you start.
Okie dokie. So what is dialogue? It's a literary technique in which writers employ two or more characters to be engaged in a conversation with one another. So basically, like, you have a conversation, we're having a conversation right now. This is our dialogue of our podcast.
Okay. That's a good definition.
Yeah.
I jump into what the purposes of dialogue are. What you've got something similar. What did you call yours?
Why is dialogue important to a story?
Okay, go ahead and start.
So my first one is that it keeps it moving forward. It helps advance the plot.
Yes, I have that one too. It moves the plot through showing, not telling. Instead of having to have this info dump of information, dialogue is a great way to get information out there and move that plot forward by showing rather than telling.
Definitely. Yeah.
next?
It can employ character developments and relationships in your stories. It mimics life and brings the reader into the story with your characters. It can help establish backstory, and it can establish a mood in a scene.
Nice. Okay, so yeah, my purposes are very similar. Number one, it's a break in narration. So instead of just someone
Oh,
telling you a story, it breaks up that narration and, like you said, brings your reader into that point.
yeah.
It moves the plot forward, like we said. It can be used to divulge information about your character. It can be used for foreshadowing. Dialogue is an excellent way to get foreshadowing across.
Yeah.
And it can just provide information in general. You can get backstory across without that info dump of, 200 years ago. You can do that through dialogue.
Right. Yeah.
So those are pretty much what you had as well. And then I went in to split that down and talk about how to character develop with dialogue. But I
Okay.
think you've got it a different way.
I do, yeah. I have basically bullet points from here on out where I talk about how you can write the best dialogue for your story, the elements that you should include in dialogue, and the way to make it as smooth as possible. So, but I like the way I think that you
Okay.
did yours. So go ahead and start with that.
Okay, so how to character develop with dialogue. Number one, your personality of your character is going to come through in how they talk. Are
Yeah.
they snarky? Are they sarcastic, witty? Are they dull? Trying to think, there was a book I read and I can't remember what it was, but there was the soldier character and he was just the facts, boring, had no sense of imagination at all, and it
Yeah.
frustrated all of the other characters around him. But you got through dialogue, you got that personality trait through his dialogue, the way he talked.
Yeah.
My fairies are extremely humorous and mischievous, and so in my book Frickin' Fairies, their dialogue, you get that feel of their humor through their dialogue. You can have someone who is manipulative, and that can come through it. Think about when you're talking to someone and they want something, but they're not coming out and saying it. That comes through in their personality trait of being a manipulative person is going to come through in that dialogue.
Yeah, definitely.
And then every character in your novel is unique. So I think we had talked about this in one of our other podcast episodes, where you should know by what they're saying and the words they use which character it is without having to say Albert said or who it is. They should know by that.
Absolutely. I
Go
think we
ahead.
talked about that one in our episode about voice. I think it was a mini. And I have the same thing where, a teenager is going to use more slang and they'll be more loose, I think, with their verbiage, whereas, a librarian or a writer or whatever might use more elaborate language to get across their point. And I think that ties in a lot with voice. And you can get a lot of that. Yeah, and you can get a lot of that in with dialogue.
So they all look different, act different, so it should be no different with the way they speak. And I have some examples, like Ben from the Mercy series. When Ben is talking, he can't say anything without cussing. Every other word is a cuss word. So even if she doesn't say who it is, just by what that person's saying, we're like, oh yeah, that's Ben. Ben's saying that.
Right.
Kate Daniels in the Alana Andrews stories, she is a straight shooter. She doesn't mince words. She doesn't play games. She's not coy. She's right out there. So her through the way she speaks. Beck in my Frickin' Fairies seems to talk without thinking. So there's a lot of things that she says that gets her into trouble because she doesn't think about it. So by the way her dialogue is that you're going, oh, Beck, stop. Stop
Please
saying
stop
that.
talking.
And Louie, in your Louie and Delaney book, Louie has learned what not to say.
Right.
Because of how she was raised. And so her vocabulary and dialogue is extremely different from Delaney's dialogue, who is a friendly, happy, wanting to help you person who trusts people.
Right.
Louie does not trust people. And so her dialogue, you feel that through her dialogue. What is their personal vocabulary? That's along the same lines. Like Trick in my Demon Hunter series, she is smart, she's quick, she's realistic, more like the journalistic. I think we talked about journalistic style.
Yeah, yeah,
She talks more that way. Her words are extremely intelligent. She's had a background of training, and her life has been hard, and she's been abused and tortured. And then there's Beck, who believes in the good in everybody. And so
he
they're
really, really, really believes in the good in everybody.
she does. And, wants to help people, whereas Trick doesn't want to help people, doesn't believe people are worthy of being helped. And so that vocabulary, when you're writing dialogue, think about that when you're having your character say something.
Yeah.
Louie has had to learn the best ways not to anger her mentor or her boss, I guess. And so
Right.
her personal vocabulary is very careful.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Delaney doesn't have that background of an issue. Aiden, your character Aiden,
Yeah.
she's a college student. She's had a normal life upbringing up until the point that the book begins. It's been
Right.
normal life. So her vocabulary is going to be different than Trick's vocabulary. Trick has a lot of military vocabulary because she
Right.
was raised in that military structure.
Yeah.
And Aiden, a college student, is going to have, like you had said, more slang and that kind of thing, a more comfortable vocabulary than Trick does.
Right.
Think about who they're speaking to. Louie speaks very differently when she's talking to her boss than when she's talking to her bodyguard, or when
Absolutely.
she's talking to Delaney. She is very different in how she speaks. So keep that in mind when you're writing a character.
Yeah, because I think you can get across so much information through dialogue about what your character thinks of another character, even without telling your reader, oh, Louie does not like her boss. I don't have to say that, because she's going to react and say things where you can tell, oh, she's not going to mess with her boss, and she's very careful with him, and she doesn't quite like him. But you can get across feelings like hostility and love or worry or exasperation just by using dialogue with your characters.
I agree. When I started this, I was thinking, how am I going to come up with things to talk about? Because I write dialogue the same way I cook. You just kind of until it looks right. And I guess I do that a lot with writing, until it feels right and looks right. But as I started researching it, I realized we do these things. I mean, I think a lot of writers do this automatically, but it's helpful to keep in mind these actual points now that they're listed out. It helps you keep them in your mind while you're writing. What do the characters speaking to each other want? Go into a conversation expecting something out of that conversation.
Right, because
go ahead.
Because every conversation that your character is going to have, there should be a reason to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. There's a motive behind it, so they're going to want something out of it. And same for the character that they're having the conversation with.
Yeah, even if it's just trying to get information. Are you talking to this person because they have information you need?
Right.
So are they trying to ascertain the truth? Are they trying to persuade someone? Sometimes you enter into a conversation to try to persuade someone to your point of view, or to get them to do what you want them to do.
Right.
So who are they speaking to? I think I already said that one.
Yeah.
And then I move on to using conflict in dialogue. Did you have anything more about the character development?
I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered everything that I had for a characterization. Yeah.
Okay. So most conversations are conflict. Both sides are expecting something out of that conversation.
Right.
So think about subtext, things that you don't say specifically out loud, but you read between the lines. That you can work into your dialogue as well, where they're saying something other than what they actually mean. Sexual innuendos is an example. Right. I meant to try to go back and find examples of all these, but I think we all know what I'm talking about with subtext. Right. Again, what is it that your characters speaking to each other want? Are they trying to get along? That manipulative character might be trying to persuade someone to give them money. Maybe they're a con man. Maybe it's a con that their vocabulary and their dialogue is all going to be geared to getting this person to do what they want them to do.
Right.
Also, along that line, I remember your siblings. This is an example of how to use dialogue to get what you want. You were always the one that they would make come talk to us about wanting to go out and eat. Taylor.
Oh yeah, they still do that. Still to
Yeah.
this day, I'm 26, almost 27, and Courtney is almost 30, and she still is like, hey, go ask mom and dad if we can go out to eat. And I'm like, why me? And she's like, you can get them to say yes. And I'm like, okay.
So that just, when I was researching that, I'm like, I think that's the Taylor of our family. They always have her do that.
Yeah.
There are pleasant conversations that people have just chit-chatting, but in a book, those can read boring.
Yeah.
It just depends on the reason. So avoid chit-chat unless you're trying to provide something. Like, think about the situation where there's something dire happening and the character is trying to chit-chat because they don't want to deal with what's happening. They're trying to ignore that this danger is coming. And so they're talking about, oh, it's so pretty outside today. And
right.
So that is a use of dialogue, chit-chat, to show something else. But chit-chat for itself it might slow down your plot.
Yeah, I agree. I think another good way to use chit-chat would be if two characters are coming together for the first time after having an argument in a previous scene or something like that, and they're like, oh, well, I'm mad at you and you're probably still mad at me, and we had a big fight, but how's it going? That weather, how about them Niners? Because it makes it awkward, and I think it adds that conflict. I think there is still conflict in that form of chit chat.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I have read, beta read things for other people where they clearly aren't understanding. They have just chit chat. And I think what they're trying to do is get across, oh, these people like each other and all that. But there's a way to narrow down that chit chat than sit there and have a whole page of them talking about how hot the coffee is. And,
right.
That's not important to your plot.
Yeah.
You can still show that likability between two characters without having to have idle chit chat.
Yeah.
So, sidestepping is another way to increase conflict. When someone asks a question and the person they're talking to sidesteps that answer, doesn't answer directly.
Yeah.
That is also a way to increase conflict by using dialogue.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. That's a good one.
So that's all I have for conflict. And then I move into tips for making the dialogue sound right.
Oh, nice. I have some stuff about, how the dialogue should drive the plot forward. I don't know if you have a specific section on that. Okay. Do you want me to go ahead and go over it?
Yeah.
All right. If you take a conversation out between two characters and it doesn't affect their relationship, your character, or the outcome of the story, then you can take that dialogue out. And I think that kind of goes along with what we were just talking about with the chit chat, like those kinds of conversations and that kind of dialogue you can take out. So just kind of make sure it affects the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did the dialogue strengthen or weaken a character's resolve? Because that can, drive the plot in one direction or another. And both ways are perfectly fine. Like, those are both good things. But I think that's a good use of dialogue, is getting across how your character feels about what is happening in a book.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And then, and then I think you talked about this a little bit, is does the dialogue shed light on a character's desires? You get to learn a little bit about what a character wants through their dialogue, as opposed to them thinking it or being told in the narrative what a character is after.
Yeah, and I think that same, they could talk to more than one person, and if you have that same drive in each of those conversations, it really gets it across to your reader. This is something they really want. They're talking about this point with everybody.
Right. Yeah. And then avoid small talk was the last one. So that's all I had for moving the plot forward. Just, if it's not useful, then take it out. And it'll make your book more concise, and it'll make the dialogue seem more real, I think. So.
Yeah, that I have a point in that too somewhere. I guess I'll get to it about real dialogue and not real. Oh, I think it's my next point actually.
Go
So
for it.
tips for making sure the dialogue sounds right. Number one, read the dialogue out loud. Trust your ear. Trust how it sounds. It should sound real, but not real. That's what I was about to talk about. When we talk over each other. We say, we say, that's all real, but we don't want all that extra stuff in our dialogue. So we want it to still sound real, but we're going to take out all the ums and the talking over each other unless that needs to happen for a particular reason. Like they need to be talking over each other because one needs to miss not hearing some bit of information because they were talking over. But otherwise, you clean that stuff out. You make it crisper. Then it's still real, and you can hear that when you read it out loud. It still sounds real. It's not stilted. It's it's the way people talk, but we take out all that extra problem.
Right.
It's like it's not a transcript from court where they actually have to write down every word. So you're giving an impression, but improving on actual real conversation.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting because I came across that when I was doing the research too. And, I never really thought about it, that's what we do. Because obviously, as we're doing this podcast, I say a million times and I say, a million times. And I pause and all that kind of stuff. But in my writing, I definitely don't add in all those things unless it's necessary to get across what my character is thinking without saying my character is confused, So
editing these podcasts, it's interesting. The audio only that goes onto the onto the podcast part is totally different. I do have to edit out all the ums and all of that because you're only hearing. But on the video, I have found that it's more natural to let the ums and all of that stay in because it's normal and people are seeing us. They're seeing our reactions and our facial expressions and all of that on the video. So it's a totally different type of editing too. When it's just the written word, the sound only word, it's different than physical real life conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have anything else after that, or should I move on to my next point?
No, I think reading your work out loud in general is probably a good idea, but I think you can definitely get the flow and hear how a dialogue might sound awkward if you read it out loud because, there are things that I would never say out loud. Like I would never word a sentence a certain way, but I might in writing because I haven't heard it out loud. And so reading it out loud, I'm like, oh, that sounds funny. I'm gonna change that. So I definitely think it's a good tip overall is to read out loud.
Okay. Avoid mannerisms as a part of dialogue. You may have this under grammar or whatever of how to do dialogue. People say things, they don't wheeze things, gasp things, sigh things, laugh things, grunt things. That you speak. It's hard to speak and wheeze at the same time. So you probably aren't wheezing while you're speaking. So you need to separate the action from the dialogue. You can say, she laughed, period. I don't think so. And, in the dialogue I don't think so. She laughed. Well, I don't think so. I mean, how do you laugh?
Right. Yeah. It doesn't work great. Yeah.
Yeah. So avoid mannerisms as a part of the dialogue. Just make it a separate sentence. Just clean that up. Don't try to avoid. You can probably say something like, I don't think so, she said, laughing, although that's not a great way to word that. I think she laughed, period. I don't think so is a better, more action-y in the moment. So. But, you can do it that way. Just don't have her say, I don't think so, she laughed, because you can't talk and laugh at the same time generally.
Right. Yeah. Okay. No, I agree with that. And I'm going to segue from that into dialogue tags.
Okay.
Because, you don't want to overuse dialogue tags and you do want to vary them to some degree. But I've seen lots of tips to say, don't use said. And then I've also seen lots of tips that say, no, use said, like it's great.
Yeah, only use said. Yeah, I've seen both. Right.
Which I don't think either way is correct. I think there is a happy middle. because you can get so much out of your story by using different words other than said. But if you use them too much, it's going to trip up your audience, I think.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to say something, happy, then, or let me think. If I want to say something quietly, then I can say she whispered, and that tells
Right.
your reader automatically, oh, this is very quiet. She's trying to stay quiet, etc.
And you can whisper and talk at the same time because it is a form of talking.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think
Exactly.
that one might be necessary because when you're just reading what she's saying without saying she whispered, you don't know that she's, that whispering means there's a reason that she's having to be quiet. Something's, they're in a dangerous place, or they don't want someone to overhear something. And that tells you, that one word, that tag tells you something.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, like on that same train of thought, if you want to get across what your character is feeling, you can do that with the words in the dialogue. If a
Right.
character is excited, you can show that with word choice, plus action outside of the dialogue. So I think there
Right.
are a lot of ways, and you don't have to say she said happily. You
Right.
can, you can tell that a character is happy through your word choice and through the things that she says and does, or he, whatever characters.
Right. Right.
You can tell exactly what they're feeling through dialogue. So I think
Yeah.
I think those are just important dialogue tag notes.
I think so. That's a good point. I didn't have anything about tags in here. The next thing I have about making sure it sounds right is remember when people are talking to each other, they're not in a void. It's not just an empty white space room. They're doing something while they're talking.
Oh, yeah.
They're drinking, or
Yeah.
they're eating, or they're cooking dinner, or they're making coffee, or they're walking. So it's very rare for people to just talk and do nothing else. Even if you're in an interrogation room and there is nothing else that you're doing, you're still sitting at that table handcuffed. There's still, it's not a void. It's just not this
Right.
white hole. So you can use your dialogue to get that across.
Yeah, I think there's a term for that actually. I think it's called talking heads, where you just have, one character talking and the other character talking. I think it's called talking heads, and that's like where there's no action.
I've never heard that before.
I think so. I'm pretty sure. I could be crazy. I have been in isolation for a month now. So
Well, I think a lot of what we do in our writing just comes to writers naturally. We don't
yeah,
know that there's a term for it because we just
yeah,
do it instinctively. And so I think it is, most people do say, oh, they're cooking dinner, so they're chopping the knives, or, with the
right,
carrots or whatever with their knives.
yeah,
Let's see. Are they cooking dinner? Are they hiding in a trench to keep from being found? Are they somewhere hoping to get something? Oh, so like if you're out for an interview, they would be noticing what other people are wearing. Gosh, my suit's not fancy enough. Look at her $100 shoes, and I can only afford a $35 pair of shoes. That kind of thing is going on in your mind too. Now that might not come out as dialogue. It might come out as dialogue in her head,
right.
or his head, but it is something that's going to be interspersed amongst the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in an interview and you're intimidated by this person that's in, and you might notice that his tie is a $6,000 tie, which is more than you make in a year or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
So that kind of thing is going to be thought in between the dialogue, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, it does.
Keep it short. Most people don't run long dialogues, except for maybe me when I've been drinking picklebacks. But that is, people don't just. Well, I do know some people that do. I do know people that can talk and talk and talk and talk, and you're just like, stop.
Your coworker Chuck.
Yeah, yeah.
He is
And one of my
people.
judges talks a lot too.
Yeah.
But generally, in a book, that's not going to help your plot move forward. It's going to end up being a stumbling block, and you don't want that to happen. So think wisely about how to get across what your character wants to say without making it this long 3-page, monologue,
Yeah.
I guess that would be. Add slang and banter. This can help make it sound more realistic, but don't make it so odd that your reader's going to stumble on it and go, what?
Yeah. Be like, what did you just say?
Yeah. Like in Beck, in my freaking fairies, one of the fairies says crap it all the time.
Yeah.
And it rubs off onto Beck, and she finds herself saying crap it all the time. And
Yeah.
so it's just, that is a piece of dialogue that you're not going to probably see in any other book. People just don't write crap it all the time, but that happens to be what this particular novel has, that, and that word becomes important throughout this novel as their friendship grows and things happen. So
Yeah.
Add intrigue I have, which you can do that through the way they talk to each other.
What do you mean by like adding intrigue?
You know how people don't answer exactly, that's going to make your reader go, why didn't they say that? Or we saw this, so why, we know our main character, why is our main character saying something? So, and that raises the intrigue.
Yeah.
I do have, last night we rented Hunter's Moon on Netflix, I think. And it is a great example of not great dialogue. And I know what they were trying to do. I know what the writer was trying to do. It was, they were trying to give us clues through the dialogue with things that weren't said and the way things were said. They were leaving us clues, but it was so bad. I don't want to, I'm sorry, but it was really not well done.
Was it like blocky, or did it just like feel fake, like it didn't flow well, kind of?
It was to the point where I was trying to decide, is this really a parody? Is this supposed to be funny?
Yeah.
Because it's really bad, but I don't know. And it did have, like Thomas Jane was in it, and he is one of my favorite actors. He did the Punisher, the original Punisher, not the Punisher on Netflix, but
yeah,
I think that man is great. He was in one of those shark movies too. I think he is an excellent action adventure hero. And he was the sheriff in this one, and the words that they had, the script made him say, he is an excellent actor. And it was a very shallow character, and even his acting skills could not do anything with that dialogue that they had him. Oh, it makes me want to sit down and rewrite that movie.
Yeah.
Because it could have been really, really good. And I guessed, of course, the things that they were trying to be so coy about with the way they were talking. I'm like, I turned to my husband, your father, and said, it's got to be this. He hates it when I do this. This is the curse of living with a writer. But I turned to him and I was like, the only way this makes sense is if it's this, this, and this, because what they're saying makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the writer was trying to be coy and trying to have them say things to build that intrigue and to make us go, what is that all about? But instead it was like, people don't talk like that. Halfway through the movie, I was tempted to just turn it off.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, I'm one of those people that even if I start a bad book, I read it all the way through. I have a really hard time. I have to finish what I start. Maybe that's the lawyer in me. I have to finish.
I don't have that problem.
I know
a
lot of people.
The book, I'm like, nah.
I know a lot of people are like, no, life is too short to read a bad book. But I can't not. Once I start, I have to finish.
It depends on how much they've hooked me. Like, it can be a bad book and it can have bad dialogue, but if I'm interested in how that story turns out, I will finish it.
Well, and I did want to make sure I was right, which I was. But, your poor father, I told him the whole story from the very beginning. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. This writing is terrible. I just researched dialogue today. This is awful. So, and then it was really sad because at the end of the movie, there was a thank you from the author to, I think, a relative, an aunt or somebody who had passed away. And, thank you for encouraging me to write and all of that. And I'm like, you need to keep writing. That's a horrible thing. I want to support all writers. I'm not published, so I can't say that I'm any good either. Maybe people read mine and go, but it was just reading these points. I can see where he was, or she, I don't know if it was male or female, was trying to do those things. They were trying to add in intrigue through the way they had them talking to each other.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
I
go watch that movie.
Yeah, you gave it stellar reviews. I will right on that.
It has great actors in it.
I
Really,
believe you.
really good actors.
I believe you.
And then interruptions are a good thing in dialogue.
Yeah, because people
People are
talk
not,
over. I cut
like
you
we
off
just
all the
did.
time, just like we
Yeah.
just did. Yeah. So it's natural. I feel like.
People are impatient. They have their point that they want to say, and so they do. They talk over each other, and you can use interruptions. We always talk about throwing rocks at our characters.
Yeah.
You can use interruptions as a rock where this information has got to be gotten across, but they're interrupted by whatever happens in the dialogue, and that point never gets across, and so bad things happen
Yeah,
because
and it also leads your reader to be like, well, what were they going to say?
uh-huh.
Or what the heck just interrupted them? Oh, it reminds me of in the Mercy Thompson books, in the one where she's fighting a river monster, and she gets pushed into the river while she's talking to someone, and you're like, excuse me, like what? Excuse
What
me,
was she
wait.
gonna say?
What
Yeah.
was she gonna say, and who the heck? What just happened? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I
My
agree.
next point is I go into the grammar of dialogue, and I know you've got this too.
I do, and I think we've covered pretty much everything else that I had.
Yeah, that's it for me. Other than I've got some great one-liners that I want to talk about, dialogue that has stuck with us through generations. So I'll get to those.
Okay.
Those are fun.
Yeah. Well, let's go into formatting then.
Okay, my first point was when dialogue ends with a question or exclamation mark, the dialogue tag following the quotation mark should be in lowercase. So quotation mark, I'm glad you're here, exclamation point, quotation marks, she said, and the she is not capitalized.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I have that one too.
Okay. Then you do the next one.
Begin a new paragraph when a new speaker starts speaking.
Yes.
So if you've got two characters speaking, then when Aiden stops talking, then Joe can start talking next, but you start a whole new paragraph for Joe.
Yes.
My next one.
I have that one too. My next one, when one character's dialogue extends to more than one paragraph, start each subsequent paragraph with a double quotation mark and place your closing double quotation mark only at the end of the following paragraph.
Interesting. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, this was one I struggled with when I was a kid, and so I learned it because I got it wrong all the time.
Yeah.
You start the dialogue with the quotation marks, blah, 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 and then you have to have a new paragraph because people don't talk all in one paragraph. They're talking, you go to the next paragraph, no ending quotation marks there because it's still the same person talking. You start the next one with the quotation marks, and you don't put the final quotation marks in until they are done speaking.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
It's going to be rare because you don't want your character going off on this long monologue, but it does happen sometimes, and when it does, that's how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have that one too. I just was trying to wrap my brain around the way that you worded it versus the way that I had it worded. So
I'm sorry.
No worries.
What's your next one?
Let's see. So start with a lowercase letter if action interrupts your dialogue. So I should have written down examples of all of these, but basically, quote, the cat walked to the bridge, comma, quotations, he said, comma, quotations, and he fell off. And the and would be lowercase.
Okay.
So,
I have something similar too, but on that same point, action before dialogue is a separate sentence, like Sarah cringed, and then I can't believe I failed. That's two separate sentences. But when you're doing, I'm trying to find one where I had it like you in the middle.
yeah.
Not tonight, comma, he said, and he is lower, comma, not in this weather. That's the same like what you just said about the cat. So yeah, I have that one too.
Nice. You had a better example. My poor cat fell off a bridge.
Poor cat son.
I know. He's sitting right there. That's why I looked around, I was like, what can I make a sentence about? And he's right here. So he got to fall off a bridge.
Place punctuation inside the quotation marks and the dialogue tag outside.
Yes.
So quotation, John was just here asking about you, comma, quotation, Bill said. So the comma goes before the quotation marks.
Right.
What's your next one?
Use single quotes when quoting something within the dialogue. So if you have dialogue and you want to quote a word that another character has said, then use like a single, like an apostrophe kind of type thing.
I have that too.
To close bracket that quote. Yeah.
Mine says, I've got an example, quotation mark, Sarah, Mr. Smith specifically said, comma, single quotation, do not use magic outside school, comma, single quotation, and you did it anyway, exclamation point, end quotation.
Perfect.
So, an example of that one.
Yeah, I'm glad you did examples because I really should have.
And then when action or attribution interrupts dialogue, I think this is what you just said, use lowercase as dialogue resumes. That, comma, she said, hurt bad. And that's all lowercase and in two separate thingy thingies. And then my last one was each speaker requires a new paragraph, which you already said. Do you have any other ones?
I have one more, and that's you don't add additional punctuation after ellipses. So if you have a character trailing off, that ellipses does count as punctuation, and it indicates that a character is trailing off and speaking. I've had issues with this one myself, and so this is one that while I was researching, I was like, it's good to know as long as it's true. But basically, if a character trails off by saying, well, sorry to tell you, but I think he died, ... quotations.
So I have a question about that because I love to use the ... thing all the time.
Yeah.
Do you put, and you may not know this, but
I think I know your question.
Well, ... is there a space after the L in well before the first dot?
I should have looked it up and I have no idea.
Because I always put spaces and it always comes up as being wrong, and I don't know if it's because of that space or if I'm doing something else wrong. And then I wasn't sure, okay, so well, ... is it then a comma and the end?
I've never seen a comma after it. I feel like in my head I would do well, ... space like you do, and then start, I think, such and such.
What if what if well ... is the end of the sentence and you need to put the second quotations there? Does it not have a comma?
No, so I think it would just
says, well, he said, would that not then be a comma?
I don't think so.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's something I struggle with too.
I might need to do more research on that, and maybe I can write a little blog thing and talk about it a little bit more, because I need to look into that more myself. I actually don't use ellipses that much. I hate seeing them all over my pages.
I love them, and it may be something that I need to force myself to edit out.
I don't know that they're necessarily a bad thing. I think it's just a personal preference of mine that I don't use them that often, and that might have actually come from not knowing exactly how the grammar works with them. Maybe. I have no idea, but typically I try not to use them, and if I can, I will not use them. But I do have characters trail off in speaking and all of that, so I use them there.
That adds intrigue and suspense and all of that too. That pause.
Yeah.
That incomplete thought is an important thing too. And so I just wonder. I don't know that I write it right. I have no idea.
Well, me neither. I'm not an expert.
Okay, so you can do a blog on that one and post it on our website.
All right.
The next things that I have are just iconic dialogue that we all know. So have you got other things?
Nope. My last thing that I have is an interview question.
Okay. So there are iconic dialogue lines that you're going to know every one of these. So, frankly, my dear.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no place like home.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in Kansas anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I use that one myself a lot.
Classic.
To my big brother George, the richest man in town. That That's from the every angel get an angel got his wing. The
Oh, yeah, I don't remember the title of it right now, but yeah.
yeah. Um, what we have here is a failure to communicate.
Yeah.
Go ahead, make my day. Those are the movies Daddy loved to watch. Clint Eastwood movies.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
May the force be with you.
Oh, what's that one? I have no idea.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Run, Forrest, run.
Classic, classic.
And you had me at hello.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
one.
So our books might never have legendary lines like that, but it
Right.
is something to strive for when you're writing your dialogue. Think about what you're saying. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, those are good.
I
So
think writing dialogue is one of my favorite things to do too. Like you can just get so much across through dialogue. Like I think writing hostility between characters is just it's so much fun.
I
Um
like to write with the sexual innuendo in between there. I
yeah,
think that is fun because the words
yeah,
are innocent, but you know what their meaning is not.
right.
I
Yeah.
love to write that kind of
Yeah,
dialogue. But
definitely.
a dialogue is something that just comes, it's intuitive. It's not something I ever had to research on how to do. It just comes.
Yeah.
And I can't say that what I've written is any good because I'm not published yet, but
Same.
I feel like it's good. I mean, and
Yeah.
now having read all of these points that we learned, I'm like, oh yeah, I do that. It's just something we automatically do.
Yeah, I think it was really helpful to research this for me though. Like
Hmm.
even though I do automatically do a lot of these things, it's nice to like actually have it in mind and to think about it and be like, "Oh, I do this here." And then I can
Hmm.
see I think better in other places in my work where I'm like, "Oh, that could use some work and I can actually fix this up."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What's your interview question?
What do you love most about stories? AKA, why are you a writer?
Oh, there's a difference between reading and listening to stories and writing stories. I love going places, and I love the places you can go in books and the places I can take my readers in books, places that we can't ever really go in real life,
Yeah.
especially with fantasy. We can go to entirely new civilizations and see new species. And my book with Kada, where she starts here in Atlanta and ends up in this other world, that was so much fun to write
Yeah.
because I created an entire world with creatures and their own political interactions. And she stumbles into things because she doesn't know what their laws are and their rules are on how you socially interact. And so she makes all kinds of problems as well. It's not as bad as Beck does in the fairy world, but
Yeah.
and that to me is just so much fun. But on the reading side, I love going to those places. I
Yes.
love being taken somewhere that I've never thought of before,
Yeah.
something that surprises me and sweeps me away. I love it.
Yeah.
What about
Mine
you?
is, yeah, mine, I love the emotion of a story. That's always what makes me want to write when I'm reading, is by the end of the book, I'm like, oh my God, that story made me feel so much. And I love these characters and I want to get across, I want to make my audience feel that way when they read one of my stories. So I think it's definitely the emotion and the investment that you get in those characters. Because, I mean, character development is my favorite part of starting a story. How can my character change and where does she go and who does she fall in love with and whatever. So I think it's definitely the emotion. And I know that you don't like movies and books with endings that are not happily ever after, but I
Yeah.
love all stories that have, those kinds of things because there's so much emotion in them and I like reading that emotion.
I think it's the world itself more that I love. I remember reading the Dragonlance series, the very first fantasy set that I ever read,
Yeah.
and the way that the authors described the food. I wanted to eat that food. The
Yeah.
smell of the food, the potatoes that I don't even remember the characters' names now, but it's the world I think that makes me. I mean, of course, the characters because you're not going to
Yeah.
read, but I don't know that it's the emotion that takes me more than it is the excitement of this new place and these things that are there that we don't have, this magic that I've never even considered the possibility of. So I think mine is more place than person, and yours is more person than place.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Somewhere I've got the outro here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you guys.
Let's see. Here we go. Don't forget, we still have free merch. We are now on YouTube also with the video, which is a little scary. But we're here.
Fine.
Yeah, let's see. Our website, which has everything on it that you need from us, is eatdrinkrightpodcast.com. You can contact us through there. We really want to hear what topics you want to hear about. Visit
also, if you disagree with us, sorry to interrupt you, Mom.
Mhm.
If you disagree with us, let us know. Do it. I want to hear from you guys. I would love to get new perspectives on things.
Me too. I mean, we could be totally wrong about certain things, and I would love to, teach me.
Yeah.
So let's see, all our social media, we've got Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I try really hard to connect with everybody on there. The writers community on Twitter is amazing. They
It's
have
incredible.
been very supportive of us there. So we're out there. Visit our Patreon, patreon.com/EDW podcast. We need your support. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.